You are looking at a live picture of Capitol Hill where the final scheduled public hearing of the January 6th assault, the investigation into the January 6th assault took place inside, and it took us inside that terrible day when a mob tried to overturn the will of the American people. Welcome back to CBS Mornings. The House Select Committee relied heavily on video we'd never seen before, showing congressional leaders searching for anyone who could help defend the Capitol. This is Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer calling for protection.
I'm going to call up the effing Secretary of DOD. We have some senators who are still in their hideaways. They need massive personnel now. Can you get the Maryland National Guard to come too?
Hi, Governor. This is Nancy.
CBS News chief political analyst John Dickerson joins us now for more. John, good morning. Dramatic ending here to the scheduled hearings and dramatic ending to that hearing itself with the unanimous vote to subpoena President Trump. What happens now?
Well, the subpoena President Trump's not likely to testify, of course, and then if the Republicans take control of the House, the subpoena goes away. The subpoena and the questions about it probably keep a little bit more focus on this topic now that the hearing's over, but otherwise it's now just a matter of debate and I guess part of what the elections might be about, although they might not be about them at all.
What did you make of the video that we saw in real time, shot, by the way, by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who's an award-winning documentarian?
Alexandra, yes.
Yeah, who just happened to be there and took out her iPhone, good on her, to record all of that. But to see that in real time, when they seem to be working together, John, in that moment.
Well, the first thing is that...
And they were scared.
Well, it also reminds us, yes, it's an unguarded moment. We don't get unguarded moments with politicians. Every one of those, we've all talked to them and we know what the freeze-dried answer looks like.
Right.
That was them searching for anything. That's one thing that was interesting about it. The other is it reminds us that what we all saw on that day, we all saw on that day. There are a lot of people out there trying to convince us that January 6th didn't happen. That reminds us of just how panicked things were. And then finally, they're trying to find a solution to the violence because at that time, the commander-in-chief, who should have been trying to find a solution to, was not only not trying to find a solution to the violence, but in fact was stoking it.
Yeah.
That was the moment when he knew Mike Pence was under threat. Nancy Pelosi was on the phone to Mike Pence. The president knew Pence was under threat and issued a tweet to make him more the target of the rioters.
Yeah.
So it gives us that contrast from that day.
John, I wanted to ask you about some polls that showed people's opinion about January 6th hasn't necessarily changed. I'd rather ask you, does the work actually matter?
I think, yes, it
that
matters.
The committee is doing, does the work matter?
What we don't know is whether it matters for good or bad.
Okay.
I think it matters because there's a lot of evidence that we learned only through the committee's work, and that evidence came from Republicans, so it has validity and weight. If it matters for good, people will look at the heroes in this story, the people who stood up and did the right thing.
That makes sense.
Politics, like sports and journalism, is a storytelling business. We sit around and tell the stories about our heroes. There were heroes who stood up, whether it was the police officers or officials at the Justice Department. So if people in public life who want to rise in life look at those stories and say, I want to be a hero too, then this was a platform for heroism. It also might send a lesson that, hey, don't play footsie with people who think you can use violence when you lose an election, because there will be a bad outcome. The bad way it matters is whether a party has become practiced in just making excuses, whether during this whole January 6th experience, because Donald Trump is still the leader of the Republican Party, Republicans have had to say, this doesn't matter. Well, if you wave away this, the major threat to the center of democracy, if you can get really used to waving that stuff away, then you can wave away anything.
So what did you make of the Secret Service texts? We hadn't really heard about those before. Secret Service clearly knew that we were in trouble or that something was going to happen to at least 10 days before.
The Secret Service texts give us more data about another one of those moments where Donald Trump had a choice to either make things more violent or make things more peaceful. What we learned from Cassidy Hutchins' testimony at the end of June was that the president had been told there were people with weapons at his rally and that he waved them in, said, come into the rally, be a part of this group. He knew that that would make things more violent, and he said, bring them in. What the Secret Service texts show is the Secret Service, who had warned the president, knew that things were violent, knew that there was the possibility of violence. Ahead of time. It's also obviously a question for the Secret Service. Why didn't you do more than you did?
Right.
You seemed a little relaxed about this imminent threat. So that's their own issue. But on the central player of this, it's just more data that shows that, in fact, the president did know and that in the face of knowing, he chose to make things more violent rather than less.
Somebody who knows a lot about politics, John, once told me history always gets to bat last. You know who said that? You, John Dickerson. That was you, John Dickerson. And that's true. History gets it. I said someone who knows a lot about politics. Isn't that true?
Well, our only question is how long the game is and when that batting takes place.
With John Dickerson, I always need a notepad to take notes. He's always
John's dropping gems today.
Yes, always. Thank you, John.
Great,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you.
See you election night.